Welcome back, Stas23 here, back again with some knife therapy, and today I have for you the Microtech Socom Bravo. It's been a long time since this design has been around, and Microtech decided to bring it back. However, even though it's their design, they ended up getting it outsourced by Rike Knives in China. I understand that's a deal breaker for some people. If that's the case, you can stop watching now. This is the first knife that they've decided to produce that is not in-house at their Microtech factory. I'm going to try to focus on just the knife itself, and please keep the comments civil. I'd appreciate it. Let's get some quick specs out of the way. You have a total length of 9.08 inches. So this is a full-size knife, a large knife. Blade length of 4 inches. You have a grip area from right here to the back of 4.5 inches. You have a handle thickness at the thickest portion, 0.64. That's not including the pocket clip. And you have a closed width in the pocket from the two widest parts at 1.43 inches. You have a massive blade stock thickness of 0.186. And behind the edge thickness on my particular knife is around 25 thousandths, sharpened at 28 degrees per side from factory. Don't get the Bravo confused with the Socom Elite. They are different models entirely. Of course, they share the same bloodline and the same design company, so you have a lot of the same factors. But the Bravo has a thicker edge bevel behind the edge than the Elite, and you have more of an upgraded, elaborate form function in the Bravo. I own both the clip point Socom Elite and the Tanto already, and being that the Bravo hasn't been around for many years now, and the only way for me to get my hands on one is to buy this particular one. I'm told that Microtech will not be producing the Bravo series anymore because it's just too expensive for them to manufacture. So today we're going to talk about this, and we're going to integrate this one when it is necessary. But let's get into the Tanto variation that I picked up. You can get them. You can get this one in both clip point and Tanto, serrated, non-serrated, half partially serrated as well, if that's your flavor. They're sold out at the moment, but whenever they are available, you can now pick them up on microtechgear.com. Whenever I bought this, I had to email someone that gave me a price list, and then I send them in what I wanted and the payment, and then I got the knife about a week later. So I'm glad to see them now bringing it to a website so you can buy them directly off the website. I'll leave the links down below to the website, even though at the time of this shooting they are sold out. They were available, I think, last week, and they stayed available for a little while, but all models are now sold out. I'm sure they will be getting more in the near future. Keep an eye on their Instagram page if you are interested. But let's break this one down. I can't really fault how thick this is behind the edge because they don't advertise this as a svelte EDC gentleman's style carry. Of course not. They market it as a tactical heavy duty user, and whenever you start to see my testing, you will see that it can handle some abuse. The main distinguishing factor between the Bravo and the Elite is this massive fuller blood groove channel, whatever you want to call it, right there in the blade. I find it to be attractive, and yes, stuff can get stuck up in there. I haven't really had any issues with it. I don't really cut cheese and stuff with my knives. I just, unless I have to. But that's the main thing that's different on these two as far as their blades go. And you still have the ginormous Microtech billboarding. I really wish they would just leave that off. but pretty much all the information you need: the name of the knife, the name of the company, when it was made, the blade steel, which is Bowler M390, and once again, after you see the testing, I think it has a nice proper heat treated on it. The finishing on here is done pretty nicely. It's a blasted finish, but some of the cheap knives that you've seen with ugly looking blasting finish is mainly because of how nice they made the blade look before they did the blasting. And you really can't even see any milling lines underneath there. It's a very smooth finish, and it has a nice contrast because you have the blasted on the primary grinds, you have a blasted finish on the inside of that fuller and on the top swedge up here, and then you have a nice horizontal satin on these flats right here. Really nice contrast. Hopefully it's coming through nicely on the camera. On this side, you also have Rike's maker's mark right there. And of all the overseas companies to reach out to try to get the job done, as far as who could do some of the most elaborate, well-done machining, I think there was no question on who to use, because Rike is known for their machining muscle. I've talked to a few of the overseas companies, and they all say that the owner at Rike is one of the best machinists in the business in their area. He can do some very, very ornate stuff, and for Microtech to want to get somebody to kind of replicate what they've done, that makes perfect sense to me. You do have some jimping up top on the blade right there. It's kind of mild, but I didn't really have any use for it up here. Maybe back here if you were going to be doing like a penetrating style. And this is much more aggressive in this area right here in this ramp. You have a very, very pokey tip up there on that tanto right here. And you have some meat behind it, so it's going to be able to handle, deep penetration and some side-to-side force if needed. You have flat grinds on the tanto bevel and on the primary right here. The edge came to me okay. It wasn't bad. It didn't have much bite to it. I got through all the testing with it. But as soon as I finished the testing, I did sharpen it myself. The bevels were fairly even. I now have it. I brought it to, I think, from 28 to 26 degrees per side, because I didn't want to make that bevel super huge. And the performance jumped up a good bit. You have a very generous sharpening notch right here going all the way to the back. Clears the plunge nicely, and as you can see, it didn't widen up after I sharpened it. I should have a few more sharpenings before it does start to widen up back there. You do have oversized thumb studs right there that are nice and comfortable, and they double as external blade stops. As you can see, they contact the frame right there. And when you're making a heavy duty hard use style knife, the external stops are, an excellent idea, because they're going to take away the side-to-side forces. Like, say, if you had your knife into something and you were pulling on it, or, putting a lot of pressure on that blade, it's going to put the force on the frame instead of that pivot. It's a nice design there. They did the same thing on their original Socom Elite. Nicely done there. Let's check out the access to that thumb stud. Is nice. They have the little channel into the frame, so you can just slide your thumb up there for indexing and easily deploy that blade out. You can give it a nice thwack if you want. Access to the left side, even though they don't have that on this side, there's oversized thumb studs, make it easy to access without any issues whatsoever. Now, to do the spotty flick, you can use the thumb stud right here and get it out, and I'm able to put my finger right there into that that fuller right there and give it a spidey flick as well. But it's not the easiest thing to do. I usually just catch the back of that thumb stud. The action is nice and smooth, just a light shake and it goes down. I've had to tighten this one down all the way, crank down on it because it was a guillotine after I took it apart and cleaned it and lubed it up after the testing. It was extremely smooth. Got a good bit smoother than it was for me from the factory. All right, now I'll pop up a picture of the internal workings of this so you can take a look at it while I'm talking about it. You have a very nice smooth action. You have not really a multi-row, just a staggered row bearing, ceramic bearings on here and a ceramic detent ball, giving a very, very silky action. However, it's still not as smooth as my Socom Elites. These are very, very smooth and drop shut. The action is some of the smoothest I have in my collection. Very, very nice there. But the action is very, very nice on this. It's just a different type of smoothness. They did a good job of the stainless inserts that you saw in the pictures underneath the bearing races or whatever. Are nice and polished and very, very smooth to the touch. That stuff matters when those bearings are rolling across it so it can make its own groove. All right, let's close it up and take a look at the frame. You have a massive Torx T20 there and a very crisp pivot as well. There's no slop in that pivot. Very nice and deep there. As you can see, it even has a little chamfer around it. You have a nice blue anodized titanium pivot collar. The hardware is all stainless. You have the same nice Torx T8 on the body screws. You have 3 that are showing here. And you have another one. Wait, let me open it up so you can see this. You have another one here. So 3, 4, 5, and 6. You have 6 altogether, or 12 if you count both sides. So definitely a lot of hardware, but in a hard use knife, you want to keep the frame as strong as you can from side to side as well. And just like this right here, all of it's to keep everything nice, rigid, and tight. The blade will snap before anything else fails on it. You have a titanium frame that has been milled out, and you have an overlay of very nice looking carbon fiber. It's got a nice weave pattern to it, and it's very reflective in different lighting. I like the way they did the fitment of the bolstered area and the carbon fiber to each other. They did a good job there. Nice and seamless here. My only area where I have a high spot is, I don't know if you can see this, right there. When I rub your finger right there, you can feel it. It's not catching anything, but it is up. It's not the same right here. This side's flush. This side, there you go, you can kind of see it there, is sitting up a little bit. The amount of milling on this knife is just unbelievable. To start, you start out with this huge milled area right here on the blade, jimping all over the place. Large milling areas right here to kind of give you a contoured effect. You have this flat right here. You got chamfers going all the way around. You got this deep area, chamfers going all the way around here. And then you do have a massive, massive lanyard hole that I could have done without. It's been, the hole's been chamfered on the inside as well. And then you have this chamfered area on the scale. Then you have this full length titanium backspacer that has all kinds of milling. You got texture right here that is pretty aggressive. And you do have some more right here. You have this floating area that looks like, or the illusion of a floating area right here. You do have some more jimping, aggressive texture right there. Now, during all the cutting, I was, from holding it at first, I was like, this is going to be hot spot city, because the little jumps they have at the forward area of the choil, it's pretty sharp right there. So I thought whenever I would be bearing down on this, putting pressure, it was going to be super uncomfortable in that spot. Only cutting that I, had a pretty nice mark on my hand was when I was pushing down hard onto the wood. They have this little area on the scales with these two little humps right there, and the top ridge of the carbon fiber is a little pokey, and whenever I'm squeezing down on it, that's pushing into my finger. I show it in the cutting footage, and it was rather uncomfortable. Now, that's not the biggest deal, because this is, marketed as a tactical heavy-duty knife. So most, people in that role, your law enforcement, paramedics, firefighters, military, police officers, they're usually wearing some sort of gloves. And I did a lot of cutting with gloves on, and it was very comfortable. I was locked in, and I could definitely see, why that would be a good thing with gloves on, because it really locked into my hand. But for those of us that aren't in those professions, that want to buy this knife not just to look at and to actually use, when you put a lot of pressure on it, you're going to have some hot spots, because it has a lot of hard lines on it, even though they have chamfers going all the way around. The low spots, like right up in here of the carbon fiber where they couldn't, soften it down, it's, I'm not going to say sharp, but it has a 90-degree line there. So, for regular, light duty cutting, or just your occasional pushing through something hard, you'll be fine. If my hands can get through it, yours can too. During my use of the knife, I discovered something that we will talk about more in the nitpicks, something to do with this backspacer. So stay tuned if you want to see what happened with me. Let's close it up and talk about the pocket clip. You have a massive 3D milled titanium pocket clip. It's got a good bit of tension on it, and it must be tightly press fit in there, because when I took apart the knife, I tried to pull this out because I wanted to make sure these screws right here were nice and tight, and I could not pry this thing out. I had something underneath that clip trying to pry it up. It must be deep all the way into the titanium, and it's got a very, very tight fitment. That's all I can think of. I could not get mine out. I didn't want to take a chance at breaking the knife, or breaking the clip, or cracking the carbon fiber. Let's take a look at it in the pocket now. One thing that bugs me is, because of this lanyard hole being out like this, it's pushing this pocket clip down, and you have quite a bit of knife sticking up. Now, it's going to give you a lot to grab onto, and whatever. But I would have rather see them do a hidden lanyard post in the back, push this clip all the way to the end, and then you wouldn't have so much of the knife sticking up out of the pocket. Also, the design of the pocket clip, even though it holds the knife really well, and the knife does sit up against the pocket somewhat, it is not the easiest to get material underneath there, because there's a good bit of tension on the clip. So for the most part, unless I have a really rigid pocket, I was lifting that pocket clip up to get it down into the pants. I guess you could say with a longer knife like this, heavier knife, you're going to want that extra tension to make sure it doesn't come out of the pocket. I don't know. I just like to be able to just shove the knife down in the pocket. The pocket clip is tip up, right hand carry only. It is not milled for left hand carry. Sorry about that, lefties. All right, let's get a quick weight on the knife. First in grams, 155.5 grams. And 5.4 ounces. I was actually kind of shocked by that, because let's take a look at the Socom Elite. 5.2 ounces, so not much heavier. I was expecting, all the titanium and a little bit thicker thickness behind the edge to make it a lot more heavy. All right, now let's take a look at the lockup. You're sitting at around, I'd say about 30%, and this thing is bank vault. I mean, I cannot muscle any play in any direction, and that's after all the testing, beating on the blade. Sometimes, you could have a pivot loosen up on you. I had no issues with that at all. The access to the lock bar is pretty good because you got this little cutout right here to allow you to get your thumb onto that lock bar. That said, they do have a chamfer there, but at the top of this chamfer is a hard angle right there, and that seems to be where my top of my thumb touches the lock bar. So once again, I just use that fat part of my thumb to disengage that lock, and it's not an issue. Quick size comparison: Spyderco Military and Spyderco PM2, Spartan Horsey folder, Rat Model 1. All right, nitpicks and complaints. I'm not a huge fan of a blasted finish. I would have loved to see it tumbled. That said, after all that testing, it still looks nice. So they did a good job of finishing before they blasted it. So I can't fault it that much because, like I said, it still looks nice. Of course, I would have liked to see this thinned out with maybe a hollow grind, but like I said, not all knives are geared toward, super slicers, but they did a great job with it here. Even though you have this huge thick blade stock, they managed to get this down to a nice thin edge. So it would have been nice to see that here, but I knew that going into it. Even though I like tip up pocket clips, this pocket clip paired with this lanyard hole makes it way too much out of the pocket. It would have been so nice to have a hidden lanyard hole, kept this clean looking, and you could have brought this clip back, being that it's not a deep carry pocket clip. Not the end of the world, not hurting the functionality of the knife whatsoever. And I told you I'll talk about this toward the end, but something that I'm hoping is just something wrong with my knife, but I don't think would be the case if you were to use your knife hard or put a lot of pressure down on it. I'm about to show you what I'm talking about in a second, but during the cutting I was putting a lot of pressure down on this part of the knife, squeezing, put the blade pulling up onto the scales, so the blade stops right here are kind of shoving onto the scales when I put a lot of pressure onto that blade, which could push just the scales up some, just a hair, and I'll show you what I'm talking about now. All right, this is the second time this has happened. We go to close the knife. Right there, it's stuck. And that is because, let me shed some light on it. The tang of the knife is hitting the back of this right here. You see, watch, let me open. And boom, it's hitting right there in the back. Open. So, in order to fix it, I have to loosen up this screw, and push this that direction, and then it'll take care of the problem. At least it did the first time. All right, so now you see what I'm saying. I really think, and I see right here the biggest difference. Let's close this up. Biggest difference here is, as you can see, you have one screw right here. Your next screw's right here. And you have another one down here, another one down here. So the only screw you're really missing is this top screw, because you got to have support, all the way up into this region. And from here, like I just showed, from here all the way up to the front, there's nothing right here. What they should have done is put a tight shouldered stop pin, like where you don't see it at all, up here in the front, so this can't flex up or down. Because whenever you're putting a lot of pressure on these scales, what seems to be happening, at least with mine, is pushing this down just ever so slightly. So whenever I open this, the end of the lock face right there is coming in contact with this, like I showed y'all that where it was rubbing, or if I didn't, I'll show it now. But You know, something that could have been avoided if they would have put some sort of pin or something, or even another screw, but I would have rather a shouldered pin, you know, instead of having another screw. I think it's pushing down because the barrel spacer that they have underneath here is not up against this portion right here, so it's able to push that much because it is titanium. So, you know, is it, hopefully it's just mine, maybe so, I don't know, but I would think that if anybody who were to be putting a lot of pressure onto their knives, they would probably see it too. So overall value, you know, I've had a lot of people ask me, should I buy one of these or wait and buy one of these? Well, for me, I'm going to buy the US Microtech Socom Elite all day, every day before I buy this one. I already own both of these, and this one's not going to be made by Microtech anymore, so I wanted to at least experience it. Did I enjoy it? Yes, it is a hard use knife. But if you're trying to decide between these or this one, I'd say go with this one first. I always will support US first, you know, and not to mention there's things I like about this one a lot more. It was more comfortable in hand for me. I love that thwack sound that it makes when it opens. Very, very smooth action on both of mine. Now, one thing I didn't like about this one is how they had to put the detent ball ramp, because it doesn't break the detent till right there. That's pretty crazy. I don't understand why you just don't position it to where, because I mean, obviously here they don't even have a detent ball ramp, but you're already cleared the detent, right? You know, let's see. Right when there you go, you already cleared that detent ball. So, you know, there's things, of course, aesthetically, I think this is a better looking knife, but, you know, functionally and having, you know, pride of ownership, I think the US Socom Elite is the winner, hands down for me. If you already own the Socom Elite, you know, and you love this one, you want to give it a shot, then yeah, you know, it's not a bad knife. But anytime you go over the $100 price point, to me, it's personal preference, unless there's like a major flaw. But like I did show you up here, that could be an issue if you plan on using it hard. I can't say for sure, unless I tested another one or somebody else reported on it. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave down below. I hope everybody's having an amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one.